At my own front door, my daughter smiled at the strangers behind her. "This is the living room," she said, gesturing past me like I was a lamp or a coat rack. "Original hardwood floors throughout. Mom won't be needing it much longer." I stood there in my bathrobe, coffee cup still warm in my hand, watching 3 people in business casual step into my home without so much as a greeting. My daughter, Patricia, didn't even look at me. She just kept talking about square footage and natural light, her heels clicking against the floors I had mopped 2 days ago. The couple nodded along, the woman already measuring windows with her eyes. "Excuse me," I said. No one turned. "Excuse me," louder this time. Patricia finally glanced over, that tight smile she wore when she wanted me to behave. "Mom, why don't you go finish your breakfast? We'll only be a few minutes." I didn't move. "Who are these people?" "The Harrisons. They're interested in the house. My house." She tilted her head slightly, the way she did when she thought I was being difficult. "We talked about this." We hadn't talked about anything. She had talked. I had listened. And somewhere in between, she had apparently decided that listening meant agreeing. The woman, Mrs. Harrison, shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should come back another time." "No need," Patricia said quickly. "Mom's just a little confused this morning. Let me show you the kitchen." They walked past me, all of them, into my kitchen, where my husband proposed to me 43 years ago, where I taught my daughter to make pie crust, where I still kept the coffee mug with his handwriting on it that said, "World's okayest cook." I heard Patricia open the cabinet, heard her say something about updated appliances. I set my coffee down on the hall table and walked upstairs to my bedroom. I closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the wall. There is a particular kind of silence that comes when you realize your own child has stopped seeing you as a person. It doesn't arrive with shouting or tears. It arrives quietly, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, when you understand that to someone you raised, you have become a problem to be solved. That was 3 weeks ago. I should tell you how we got here. My name is Eleanor. I'm 68 years old, retired after 31 years as a librarian at the Riverside Public Library. My husband, George, passed 4 years ago from a heart attack that came without warning on a Sunday afternoon while he was watching football. One moment he was complaining about the referees. The next, he was gone. I stayed in the house, our house, the one we bought in 1987 when Patricia was 7 and we thought we'd have more children. We never did. But we filled the rooms anyway with books and music and the kind of quiet happiness that doesn't make for interesting stories but makes for a good life. After George died, Patricia started calling more often. At first, I appreciated it. Then I noticed the questions. Are you eating enough? Are you sleeping? Have you thought about what happens if you fall? She visited more too, but the visits felt different. She'd walk through rooms with a critical eye, note things that needed fixing, mention assisted living communities with wonderful amenities the way someone might mention a resort. I always changed the subject. She always brought it back. 6 months ago, she sat me down at my own kitchen table and presented me with a folder. Inside were brochures for a place called Sunset Pines. The photos showed smiling, elderly people playing cards, doing yoga, eating in a dining hall that looked like a hotel restaurant. "Just look at it," she said. "They have a waiting list. But I know someone who knows someone. I could get you in by spring. I don't want to go anywhere. Mom, be realistic. This house is too much for you. I manage fine. You had a leak in the basement last month, which I fixed. You called a plumber. That's what plumbers are for." She sighed, that heavy, theatrical exhale I had come to recognize as her way of saying I was being unreasonable. "I'm just trying to help, then help by listening to me. I want to stay here." She closed the folder, slid it toward me. "Just think about it." I didn't think about it. I put the folder in the recycling bin that evening and assumed that was the end of it. It wasn't. 3 weeks before the strangers showed up at my door, Patricia had called to say she was coming over to discuss some paperwork. I assumed it was about George's life insurance, some leftover detail we'd missed. Instead, she arrived with her husband Mark and a stack of documents that made my chest tighten. "This is a power of attorney," she explained, sliding a pen toward me. "It just lets me handle things if you ever can't. Medical decisions, finances, that kind of thing. Totally standard." I looked at Mark. He was studying the ceiling fan like it held the secrets of the universe. "I don't need you to handle anything. Not now, but someday you might. And if something happens suddenly, I won't be able to help unless this is in place." She smiled. "It's for emergencies. You'll probably never even need it." I should have read every line. I should have taken it to a lawyer. But she was my daughter, and she kept saying it was standard, that everyone does this, that she just wanted to be prepared. So I signed. 2 days later, the realtor called to schedule the first showing. I told her she had the wrong number. She insisted she didn't. That's when I found the listing online. My house, photographed like a stranger's, described in words I would never use. Charming fixer-upper with endless potential. They'd even included a photo of my garden, the one I've tended for 30 years. I called Patricia that night. "What is this?" "Mom, calm down. There are pictures of my bedroom on the internet. It's just an initial listing. Nothing's final. You put my house up for sale without asking me." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice had that practiced patience that made me want to scream. "We discussed this. You agreed it was time to transition. I agreed to nothing. You signed the power of attorney for emergencies. This isn't an emergency. It is, Mom. You just don't see it yet." I hung up. I sat in the dark living room for a long time, listening to the house settle and creak, the familiar sounds I had memorized over decades, the radiator's tick, the loose board by the front door, the way wind moved through the old windows in a pitch only I could recognize. She thought I couldn't see what was happening, but I could. I had spent my life surrounded by stories, and I knew this one. The aging mother, the concerned daughter, the slow erasure dressed up as love. The only question was whether I would let it end the way she expected. The next morning, I called my granddaughter, Sophie. She was 24, finishing her master's degree in social work at a university 3 states away. She called me Grandma Ellie, sent me poems she liked, and once drove 9 hours just to bring me soup when I had the flu. When she answered, I could hear the surprise in her voice. "Grandma, is everything okay? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." A pause. "Okay. Has your mother said anything to you about moving me out of my house?" The silence told me everything. "She mentioned something," Sophie said carefully. "Said she was worried about you being alone, that she found a really nice place with activities and medical staff. Did she mention she's already put the house on the market?" Another pause, longer this time. "No, she didn't mention that. Sophie, I need your help." Sophie arrived that weekend with a duffel bag, her laptop, and a look on her face I recognized from her childhood whenever she was about to challenge something she thought was unfair. "I made some calls," she said, setting her bag down. "I talked to a lawyer friend from school. If you're mentally competent, which you obviously are, the power of attorney doesn't give Mom the right to sell your house, not without your explicit consent. She seems to think it does. Then she's wrong, or she's hoping you won't fight it." I looked at my granddaughter, this young woman who had somehow become my ally in a battle I never expected to fight. "I'm going to fight it." "Good," Sophie smiled. "Because I already scheduled you an appointment with an elder law attorney. Monday at 10. We spent the weekend preparing. Sophie helped me gather documents, deeds, bank statements, anything that proved I was still the owner and manager of my own life. She took videos of me cooking, gardening, having perfectly coherent conversations about books and politics and the neighbor's overly aggressive squirrel. "Evidence," she said, "in case anyone questions your capacity." I didn't tell Patricia we were coming. I didn't tell her anything. Monday morning, I sat in the office of Helen Whitmore, attorney at law, and explained everything. She listened without interrupting, took notes, occasionally nodded. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "Your daughter overstepped significantly. Can I stop the sale?" "Absolutely. The POA you signed gives her authority to act on your behalf, but it doesn't transfer ownership. She can't sell property you own without a court declaring you incapacitated, which clearly hasn't happened. So I just say no. You say no loudly, legally, and with documentation." She pulled out a form. "We'll start by revoking the power of attorney. Then we'll send a formal notice to the realtor and any interested buyers that the listing is unauthorized. If your daughter pushes back, we escalate." I signed the revocation that afternoon. The notice went out the next day. Helen also recommended I get a cognitive evaluation from my doctor, just to have on record. I did. The results were unambiguous. Eleanor Chen, mentally competent, decision-making capacity intact. Armed with paperwork, I went home and waited. Patricia called 3 days later, her voice sharp and unfamiliar. "What did you do?" "I protected myself." "You hired a lawyer? Against your own daughter?" "Against someone trying to sell my home without my permission. I was trying to help you." "No," I said quietly. "You were trying to manage me. There's a difference." She sputtered something about safety, about responsibility, about how I would regret this when I fell down the stairs and no one was there. I let her finish. Then I said, "The listing has been removed. The POA has been revoked. If you want to be part of my life, you'll need to treat me like a person, not a project." I hung up before she could respond. The weeks that followed were strange. Patricia didn't call, didn't visit. Mark texted once to ask if I was okay. I sent back a thumbs-up emoji and nothing else. Sophie called every few days, checking in, sending photos of her campus, of the cat she wasn't supposed to have in her apartment. I returned to my routines. Library on Tuesdays, garden on weekends, coffee on the porch when the weather allowed. The house felt different now. Not haunted, not sad, but awake somehow, like it had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. I began to notice things I had stopped seeing. The way morning light hit the kitchen counter, the smell of the old books in George's study, the particular creak of the third step that had announced his return from work for 20 years. I wasn't just living in a house. I was living in a history. One evening in late April, Sophie came to visit again. She brought Thai food and a bottle of wine I couldn't pronounce. We ate on the back porch as the sun set behind the maple trees. "Mom's been asking about you," she said eventually. I didn't look up. "Has she?" "She's confused, I think. She really believed she was doing the right thing. People often do." Sophie set down her fork. "Do you hate her?" I thought about that. Thought about the woman I had raised. The girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who called me crying after every breakup, who held my hand at George's funeral like she was the one keeping me upright. "No," I said. "I don't hate her, but I don't trust her. And I'm not sure I can forgive her yet." "Yet," Sophie repeated. "That's something." It was another month before Patricia reached out. Not a call, but a letter, handwritten, which surprised me. She wasn't someone who wrote things by hand. I opened it at the kitchen table, smoothing the creases, reading slowly. "Mom, I've been trying to write this for weeks. I keep starting and stopping because I don't know how to say what I need to say without sounding like I'm making excuses. I was scared. That's the truth. After Dad died, I watched you move through the house like a ghost, and I didn't know how to help. So I did what I always do. I made plans. I organized. I treated you like a problem I could solve instead of a person I should have listened to. I told myself it was for your own good, that you'd thank me eventually, that I was being responsible. But I see now that I wasn't being responsible. I was being controlling. I didn't ask what you wanted because I was afraid you'd say something I didn't want to hear. I'm sorry, not for wanting to help, but for how I tried to do it. For the listing, for the strangers in your living room, for making you feel like you didn't matter in your own home. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't know if I've earned that. but I wanted you to know that I see what I did, and I'm ashamed. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Not to fix anything, just to listen. Love, Patricia." I read it twice. Then I folded it, put it back in the envelope, and set it on the counter next to the coffee maker where I would see it every morning. She came to the house a few weeks later. No warning, just the sound of her car in the driveway, the tentative knock at the door. When I opened it, she looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, something else. "Can I come in?" she asked. "Just to talk?" I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, carefully, as if the floor might shift beneath her. She didn't sit until I offered, didn't speak until I asked what she wanted. "I want to understand," she said. "How you feel, what I broke, and if there's any way to fix it. I don't know if it can be fixed. Then I want to try anyway." We talked for 2 hours. Not loud, not angry. Just two women sitting in a living room, surrounded by 40 years of shared history, trying to find a language for things neither of us had ever learned to say. She admitted she'd been terrified since her father died. That watching me live alone reminded her of her own mortality, her own future, and she hadn't known how to face it. So she had tried to control it instead. "I thought if I planned everything, nothing bad would happen," she said. "But I forgot to ask you what you wanted." "I wanted to be seen," I said, "not saved." She nodded slowly. "I see you now. We didn't hug, we didn't cry, but when she left, something had shifted. Not repaired, not yet, but no longer broken in the same way." Summer came. Sophie graduated and got a job at a nonprofit in the city. She visited when she could, sent pictures of her new apartment, her terrible houseplants, the view from her window. Patricia started calling again. Short calls at first, just checking in, no agenda, no suggestions. Eventually, the calls grew longer. She asked about my garden, my books, what I was cooking. She told me about her work, her worries, the small frustrations of her life. We were learning, both of us, how to be mother and daughter again without the weight of expectations. In September, I started volunteering at the library again, part-time, just helping with the children's reading hour. It wasn't much, but it gave me a reason to get dressed, a place to be, a purpose outside these walls. One afternoon, a little girl asked me why I liked books so much. I told her that books were how we remember things. "Stories help us understand who we are," I said, "even when we forget." She looked at me with big, serious eyes and said, "You're really old." I laughed. "Yes, I am. Are you scared?" "Of what?" "Of being old." I thought about it. About Patricia, about Sophie, about the house I had fought to keep, and the life I had refused to surrender. "Not anymore," I said. That night, I sat on the back porch with a cup of tea and watched the stars come out one by one. George would have loved this sky. He always noticed things like that. The shape of clouds, the color of autumn leaves, the particular way light fell through the kitchen window on winter mornings. I thought about what it meant to stay. Not stubbornness, but presence. Not fear, but choice. My daughter had wanted to protect me from decline. But decline isn't something you can prevent with paperwork and planning. It comes for all of us, in its own time, in its own way. What you can do is decide how you meet it, with grace, with dignity, with your feet planted on the floor you chose. I didn't win a battle. I didn't defeat anyone. I simply refused to disappear before my time. And that, in the quiet arithmetic of a long life, was enough. If this story touched something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stay exactly where you are and remind the world that you're still here.